Okay, so think about this. When you get sick, and then you get better, where does the virus actually go? You feel fine, right? The symptoms are gone. But is the virus really gone? Well, today, we're diving into the incredible story of a virus that, for millions of us, never actually leaves. I want you to think way back to when you were a kid. Do you remember it? That maddening itch that you just could not scratch? Those little red spots that popped up everywhere and turned into blisters? For a lot of us, this was our first big battle with a virus. And I'm talking, of course, about chickenpox.
You know, this wasn't just some random illness. For generations, getting chickenpox was basically a childhood rite of passage. It was itchy, it was uncomfortable, but it was almost an expected part of growing up.
So, the sickness we all call chickenpox has a much more official name, varicella. Now, you can think of this as the primo infection. That's the sciencey term for your body's very first meeting with a virus called varicella zoster, or VZV for short. And let me tell you, that first meeting is super common and incredibly contagious.
Chickenpox just loves a crowd, especially a crowd of kids. I mean, something like 90% of cases happen in kids under 15. But here's the real kicker, the thing that makes it spread like wildfire. It's airborne, and you are contagious for 2 or 3 days before you even see a single spot. Just think about that. You're spreading it before you even know you're sick.
And the illness itself, it's like a 10-day takeover that follows a very predictable script. It kicks off with red spots, which pretty quickly turn into those famous little fluid-filled blisters. Then they get cloudy, they start to form scabs, and eventually they fall off. The weird part is that you usually have all of these stages happening at once, new spots, blisters, and scabs, all at the same time. After about 10 days, you're better. But this is where the story gets really interesting.
Because even though the sickness is over, the virus has just found itself a new home. And this is where things take a pretty fascinating turn.
So this is the big question, right? Your immune system definitely won the battle, but it didn't exactly win the war. It fought the virus back, but it didn't and couldn't get rid of it completely. So if the virus doesn't die, where in the world does it go? It enters this silent phase called latency. It's pretty amazing. Instead of running around your body causing a ruckus, the virus retreats. It literally travels from your skin, up your nerves, and into your nervous system to go into hiding. Its new home? These things called sensory nerve ganglia, which are basically little bundles of nerve cells along your spine and skull. And in there, it just goes dormant, lying in wait silently, sometimes for decades.
Because, decades later, that exact same virus that's been sleeping all this time can make a really dramatic and very unwelcome comeback. This isn't a new infection. No, this is a reactivation. And we call this sequel shingles, or sometimes zona. It's the same varicella zoster virus from your childhood, just waking up. So what wakes it up? Well, it's usually some kind of dip in your immune system's defenses. That can happen as you get older, if you're under a lot of stress, or maybe because of another illness. So how does this all go down? The playbook is actually pretty simple. The virus has been chilling out, waiting patiently in that nerve ganglion. Your immune system gets a little weaker, and that's the signal. The virus wakes up. But here's the key. Instead of spreading everywhere like it did with chickenpox, it just travels back down the one single nerve path it was hiding in. And that's where the rash appears. This is exactly why the classic sign of shingles is a unilateral rash, meaning it's only on one side of your body. It almost never crosses the middle. It shows up as this painful, burning strip of blisters, usually on your torso or on one side of your face. And believe me, unlike chickenpox, the main event with shingles is often that intense pain, which can sometimes stick around for months or even years after the rash is gone. Now, what's really wild is that our chickenpox virus, VZV, isn't some kind of lone wolf. It's not the only virus that uses this sleeper agent strategy. It actually belongs to a whole family of viruses that are absolute masters of hiding in plain sight.
So, say hello to the Herpes viridae family. This is a whole group of viruses that are pros at this latency thing. Our guy, varicella zoster, likes to hide out in nerve cells. But check out its cousins. The Epstein-Barr virus, for instance, has a totally different strategy. It hides in your B lymphocytes, which are a type of white blood cell. See? Each one has its own favorite hiding spot in our bodies.
Okay, so let's talk about that famous cousin, the Epstein-Barr virus, because it causes an illness that a lot of us are very familiar with, especially from our high school or college years.
Yep, I'm talking about mononucleosis. You probably know it as mono, or maybe by its more famous nickname, the kissing disease. And just like VSV is the bad guy behind chickenpox, the Epstein-Barr virus is the culprit here. And its favorite way to travel is right there in the name, saliva.
But here's a super fascinating twist about this virus. If you get infected with it when you're a really little kid, chances are you won't feel a thing. It's totally asymptomatic. But if you manage to avoid it until you're a teenager or a young adult, there's a 50% chance you'll get the full-blown, absolutely miserable illness we all know as mono. And the signs of mono are just classic. A totally profound, bone-deep fatigue, a high fever, a sore throat that feels like you're swallowing glass, and swollen lymph nodes. It is a miserable experience that can knock you flat for weeks. And, just like its cousin VZV, once you're over it, the Epstein-Barr virus goes into hiding in your B cells for the rest of your life.
So, what did this all mean for us? Well, from chickenpox to mono, it means a huge number of us are walking around carrying these silent, lifelong viral companions inside of us right now.
Look, if there's only one thing you take away from all this, it should be this. For this family of viruses, an infection is permanent. They don't just pass through your system. They actually integrate themselves into your cells, becoming a literal part of you for your entire life, just waiting.
So how do we deal with them? Well, most of the time, a good, strong immune system is all it takes to keep them in check. But we also have some pretty amazing modern tools. We have powerful antiviral drugs that can make a shingles outbreak shorter and less severe. Even better, we have vaccines to prevent chickenpox altogether, and a different vaccine that can boost an older person's immunity to lower their risk of getting shingles. For mono, though, it's a bit simpler. The best medicine is just rest.
And all of this leaves you with a final, kind of mind-bending thought. These viruses have been evolving alongside humans for thousands and thousands of years. They live inside our nerve cells, our immune cells, and yeah, they can cause some nasty diseases, but most of the time, they're just there, in a quiet truth with our bodies. So what are they, really? Are they enemies we have to constantly fight? Or are they just ancient passengers along for the ride on this whole human journey? It's something to think about.